There's so many that still think the government is going to save them, and they don't realize that we're paying for it. It is going to be significant increase in taxes. So as much as we think, well, inflation is under control, well, we step over the fact that taxflation is real. I think we're going to become a renter nation. Things are not going to get more affordable. Housing is not going to get more affordable.
The good news is for investors that already own real estate, your real estate is going to be worth more than it is now in the near future, which is fantastic for you. For those of you that want to get into real estate and want to buy a home and want to get into real estate, it's going to be tougher for you because the price of real estate is going up. So it may be a good entry point. You might want to think about that.
This is going to be a new game, and it's going to be challenging, and we better be mentally, emotionally, spiritually prepared.
Let's get into it, Patrick. Election results are in, and I don't know, what's the right word to describe it? Depressing? I mean, you're being stoic. You're being very good right now. I got to say, I'm impressed with your ability to keep it together. I thought that Patrick was going to lose his noodle. In fact, when I didn't hear you yesterday, I was looking at my text message before I went to bed at midnight last night. I said, I'm going to look at my text message. I got nothing from Patrick Francie, and I thought to myself, man, he's lost his shit. Like, he has lost his noodle. I thought maybe he even jumped in your own pond. I thought, did he jump off the bridge? Like, what's going on with Patrick right now?
Well, I just got back from Alberta from a great event. And of course, in Alberta, there's no worries. We don't have to have conversations about the Liberal government. We can talk about them. We can complain about them. But I just looked at it and go, you know something, at the end of the day, I'm not going to give my power away, my energy away to a government that I don't align with or agree with. The good news is, if there is any, is that at least now we have a government. You know, in spite of the fact that he was originally unelected, he's now elected. And maybe there's some direction going forward, the good, the bad. At least we know the game we're going to be playing. We're going to lose our rights and freedom of speech. We're going to lose whatever the bill is around guns, and we can't have any. And of course, we're going to save the climate. We are going to make sure that Canada is the leader in climate change initiatives, which probably means we're going to cap or shut down the oil and gas industry. I'm worried for Alberta, because this is just Trudeau on steroids.
I was actually going to talk about that. We'll come back to talking about Alberta specifically, because I know you're Mr. Alberta. And you and I are actually going to be in Alberta speaking at an event in like 2.5 weeks. And we're going to have to address this crowd. So we're going to get back to that in a second. But I will tell you from my perspective, Patrick, I'm disappointed with the results, but I am glad it's over. You know, it was literally Monday afternoon. I was in a meeting. It was Friday afternoon. I was in a meeting with some business partners, and we were talking about the real estate environment right now, and we were talking about how deals that lenders typically jump all over. I mean, it seemed like everyone was frozen in fear, and I have really not seen. And you know, I'm typically I operate really well in those conditions. But man, the environment in general is becoming so kind of frozen, and everybody is so struck with uncertainty that nobody's doing anything. And it's even getting difficult for me to operate in that environment because the whole environment is frozen. So it's not just like certain players are frozen, the whole damn thing is frozen. And I'm curious to see if it starts to thaw a little bit. Just not the fact that I think this is a great result. I don't think this is the right result for Canada, but it is at least some level of stability. And some people like obviously will prefer this versus Poilievre, not my choice, but hopefully it starts to thaw the market and we can get back to business here, because man, confidence is an all-time low. People are just stuck. And I hope that we, at least now that this is over, we can get back to business.
Well, I think, you know, what I like about us doing these segments is that we can go back and we can check, were we right, were we wrong? But at the end of the day, you know, for the past probably week, I've really checked out of any kind of social media X. You know, in any election, there's so much toxic mudslinging and conversation and real polls, false polls, conspiracy theories. I just checked out of it. I literally did not look at the results of the election till probably 8:00 Pacific time. And it's not that I'm not interested. I just didn't want to be drawn into, again, all of the stuff that's going on. So here is where we are. I think fundamentally we've got a minority government with conservative, or with the Liberals, Conservatives have a little bit more power. Danielle Smith out of Alberta is being very, very vocal. She is standing up. The NDP are still going to be the sway. I don't know what happened to Jagmeet Singh. I think he may have lost in his riding. I didn't even want to take the time to check it out. That's the bottom line there. But here's the thing about it, JG, is that as much as we're through the kind of uncertainty of government, now what people don't understand is because they were voting against the emotion of Trump, because Polyev maybe didn't stand up, take a stand, all the things that he did wrong, he lost the election. You and I have talked about that a little bit. But at the end of the day, sadly, we are going to see more capital investment leave this country. That's the bottom line. People are not going to come in, like businesses, corporations. Money is not going to flow into Canada, mark my words. And we're going to see some very, very big inflation.
It's
the climate change initiative.
Let's talk about that, Patrick, because it seems to me, and I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole, but it seems to me people miss that point about government, that if business isn't successful, if entrepreneurs aren't successful, if corporations aren't successful, and if money in general is leaving the country, that is less jobs or no jobs for everyone else. And it seems like that's a missing point. It's like those basic economics were not taught to people. And all they're concerned about is handouts from the government and more social programs, when in fact, that's not how you live. You live by having a great place to work and having a great wage. And that all happens with investment coming into the country, not leaving the country. And that's the thing that really disappoints me about the whole thing is I know the end result of more liberals, and that is more social programs, higher taxes, more everything that impacts that cohort negatively. And the very people that vote for them, they are the ones that pay the biggest price, quite frankly. And I could show you tons of examples of that. But I mean, listen, they made their bed. Now they're going to have to lie in it. It's not going to affect me because I create my own economy, period. End of story.
End of story. So, all of what you said is true. And there is a fundamental breakdown of understanding. And for some reason, there's so many that still think the government is going to save them. And they don't realize that we're paying for it. It is going to be significant increase in taxes. So as much as we think, well, inflation is under control. Well, we step over the fact that taxflation is real. We're experiencing it, and we have to pay for these government programs. We have to pay for the government bureaucracy. And I mean, let's face it, a lot of the votes that Liberals got came from immigrants or who are beholden to the government for all of the subsidies that they have and the benefits that they get by being a landed immigrant, not being critical of it, but it's extensive. And they're not voting because they understand policy. They're voting because, oh, I owe it to this particular government that let me into the country and is subsidizing me. Then you have the government bureaucracy, the public sector that is bloated. It's necessary, but not a bloated necessary. And we're going to pay for it through taxes or taxflation. That's only one aspect of what's happening. So I'm really concerned. I don't love their policies in any way, shape, or form. I don't like them in any way, shape, or form. And it's a concern. Now, having said that, our job, rein it in. Real Estate Investment Network, you and I as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as real estate investors, as business owners, provide some guidance, lend out some confidence in how to play the new game, because this is going to be a new game and it's going to be challenging, and we better be mentally, emotionally, spiritually prepared.
I think the next couple shows are going to be really around that topic of how do we play the new game. And I haven't been spending a whole lot of time. I frankly didn't think Carney was going to win. So I wasn't spending a whole lot of time preparing myself and my next 4 years of thought, because I'm not going to go on vacation, despite I'd love to go on vacation for 4 years. I wouldn't last 4 days. Well, I'd last 4 days, but I wouldn't last 4 weeks. That's for sure. I've tried it before. It doesn't work for me. But that is what we have to do now as real estate investors and say, okay, what are the next 4 years going to look like and how are we going to play this game? So let's talk about a couple different things, Patrick, that do impact real estate investors in a big, big way. What do you think happens? I'm going to talk about Alberta in a second, but in general, across the country, what happens to house prices, Patrick, in your opinion, in the next 4 years? I have my opinion. What's your opinion?
Well, we talk about it often, which is the regionality of housing prices. But let's go back a little bit. So I think there's a very good chance that we're going to chop sideways for a while in many sectors. So, let's break it down. When you look at property types, we know that the condo market is going to continue to melt down. And I'm saying it's melting down. Toronto, Vancouver, we know that. It's going to continue to melt down. It's now melting down in Calgary, Edmonton, very, very soft and getting softer. Montreal is kind of designed for what it is. It is all, when you talk about Quebec, that province in general is a renter province. I think we're going to become a renter nation. Things are not going to get more affordable. Housing is not going to get more affordable. What the fundamental breakdown with many is that understanding and monetary policy. We've been beating that drum for 4 years. Definitely, I've been hitting it way hard for the past couple of years, and understanding that under the surface, we have quantitative easing, which means more money is coming into the market, and that's only going to crank up by the end of 2025. Mark my words. That means all asset prices are going to inflate. That's what it's going to look like, but it's really the devaluation of our dollar. We've had that conversation many times. So my view of real estate, we look at the condo market, it's going to continue to get soft. We look at housing in general, it'll go sideways with certain blips in different regions. And then the multifamily sector is still of concern because of the overbuilding. You have to be really strategic in that. So that's my kind of overarching view of the world. Is that helpful?
Now, Patrick, one of the things that we know we can expect from a Liberal government is going to be, more taxes, more regulations, more hoops to jump through, and less building. Despite their bullshit promises, there's going to be less building, and there's going to be, and we actually have an interesting stat on this, on, what is the expectation as time goes on in terms of, new builds. And that for the next couple of years, that's going down. There's going to be less new builds every year. So the supply of new builds to the market is only going in one direction, and that's down, given the fact that, monetary easing that you're talking about, the devaluation of the currency, the fact that supply is going down. And even though demand is not necessarily going down, yes, we're bringing in less immigration than we did at the peak a year or two ago. Demand for housing is still strong. So the point is, Patrick, is that I see the same thing. The house prices in general are going to be trending up, and yes, they're going to chop sideways. We've got to get through this tariff war and so on and so forth. But once these things stabilize, we will see prices accelerate. And the good news is, for investors that already own real estate, your real estate is going to be worth more than it is now in the near future, which is fantastic for you. For those of you that want to get into real estate and want to buy a home and want to get into real estate, it's going to be tougher for you because the price of real estate is going up. So it may be a good entry point. You might want to think about that. That's my thoughts on it, Patrick.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think there's a couple things that, in terms of giving guidance to existing investors or those who are going to continue investing in real estate or get into the game. It's still a good game to play. I think it's a better game to play now than ever because there's less clutter in it. So in other words, there isn't everybody being a real estate genius, and you're not getting multiple offers, and you're not competing against a bunch of investors. So this is for a, sophistication level, which means that you're taking the time to gain the education, understand what goes on economically. Because here's the thing, JG, and I was giving people this warning in Alberta just in this past weekend. And I want to say it's a warning, heads up. There's a responsibility that we have as investors, as business owners. And that responsibility is to not only our capital partners, perhaps, but to ourselves in terms of how we look at real estate. Now is not the time, JG, to be over leveraged. Now is not the time to, go in at, 95% loan to value unless you have backup cash, because there is going to be a softening. We're starting to see a pullback in Alberta, in a softening of rents and demand. So this is going through that transitional phase. But for small developers like yourself who have been in it, who've been setting yourself up, putting your team together, you're dialed into a specific strategy. And I think small developers like you are going to freaking crush it, especially if you stay focused and pay attention to what's going on from a financing point of view and from a liquidity/cash flow point of view. Huge opportunities.
I want to, I thank you for bringing that up, Patrick. And actually, I want to give some real numbers here to give people a sense, because you're absolutely right. There's a lot of developers often lever up their projects in a big way. As you talk about 90%, 95%, a lot of them lever up over 100% sometimes to get the deals done, which is a very dangerous place to be. And just to give everyone a sense, and hopefully this is helpful, Patrick, but like at Visture, I keep our portfolios right now somewhere between 50% and 75% LTV. Like we're very low leverage right now. Why? Because it's not the time to be taking on a ton of debt risk right now. Now we're being very strategic, but in general, that's a very safe place to be at. It's actually under leveraged because I could be generating much better returns for myself and for our portfolio if I was to lever up. But the point is you have to weigh those. Risk returns kind of thing, and that's important. So I just wanted to give some numbers so that people can have something to anchor to.
So if you like these episodes and you want to learn more about what's going on with real estate in Canada, investing in real estate, and understanding how to invest in real estate the right way, head on down to the descriptions below. Follow those links.